Hello BookTube, my name is Elizabeth. Welcome back to my channel, Book as in Books. This is the Rootin, Tootin, Shootin, Pootin, June on the Range tag. It was created by Steve Donahue and I was kindly tagged by Melinda at A Web of Stories. So I'm going to leave links to both of their channels in the description box below. It's been a while since I did a tag, so hopefully I still remember how it works. Question number 1. A ways out west, have you ever been to the American West? Yes, I have. When I was young, when I was 11 or 12, with my parents, we went all the way to the west coast of Canada. So we drove, my father drove for like 95% of the way. And yeah, he liked to drive. So we drove all the way to Victoria, Canada, on the Canadian side of the border. And then we came back through the American West. So we were leaving from Montreal, and yeah, that's a long way to the Pacific coast. And on the way back, we saw the Badlands. We came back through Yellowstone National Park. We stopped at Mount Rushmore. We also went a bit further south to, is it St. Joseph, Missouri? The place where Jesse James got shot. I think that's where it is. There's a house that you can visit. It's the house where Jesse James was living and where he was murdered, and it's open to tourists. And there was also a museum of the American West where you could learn all about the legends of the American West. So I don't know, like the Daltons and Billy the Kid and Pat Garrett and I don't know, Wild Bill Coyote, Wild Buffalo Bill. Anyway, the legends of the American West. You could learn all about that, and that was a load of fun. Question number 2, Dry Gulch. What's the smallest town you've ever visited? That I remember, because maybe in that big travel all the way in the American West, we went through a little place that had like 20 inhabitants, but I don't remember that. One that I remember, it is in Sweden. It is Abisko. It is north of the Arctic Circle. It's a national park, and there's a village in there, and it's 85 inhabitants, and I spent a night there. There's a youth hostel there, and I spent a night there. The train goes there. That's a bit odd for me that the train goes north of the Arctic Circle, because in Canada, when you reach the Arctic Circle, you have left civilization far behind. you're not that nobody lives up there, but there really isn't a lot of infrastructures over there. So in Sweden, it's a bit tighter, I guess. It's a smaller country, so I guess the train tracks can make it all the way there. So that's the smaller place where I live. Well, not where I lived, where I spent a night and where I've been. The second question of question 2 is, how small is your town right now? Well, it's not small at all. It's over 1 million people, which surprised me. When I saw Steve's video, when he did his tag, original tag, he mentioned that Boston was about 650,000 people, and I thought, what? That's not possible. Ottawa cannot be bigger than Boston. But Ottawa is indeed bigger than Boston in population. Ottawa has over 1 million inhabitants. And if you include the surrounding towns, like the suburb, and I'm thinking mainly of the sort of sister city of Ottawa, which is on the Quebec side of the river, and that is called Gatineau. That's together, it's almost 1.5 million inhabitants, like almost 1.4. So it's well over 1 million people living in Ottawa. And I always think that Ottawa is a small town, because when you think of a big town, what do you think a big town has? So a big town has a metro. Ottawa does not have a metro. We now have a light rail train, something like that. It's a cheap system, and it keeps breaking down, and it's and we got it in 2019, so it's really, really recent. Big towns, they tend to have like big cultural institutions, such as an opera or a ballet company. We have neither in Ottawa. Big towns tend to have multiple sports teams. Like Boston, they have a basketball team, a football team, a hockey team. They have, what's the other one that I'm missing? The 3 big sports. Baseball, they have a baseball team. In Ottawa, we are struggling to keep a hockey team. That's it. And there's absolutely no baseball. There's Canadian football, but then again, it's Canadian football. It's not very big. It's impossible that a baseball team a Major League Baseball team could be in Ottawa. It's unthinkable. There's no basketball team. It really has a small town feel, but it's a big town, 1 million people. Question number 3. Oh, I'm going to call it 3A because there's a bunch of questions in there. Where the buffalo roam. Have you ever seen an American bison in person? Well, yes, at Yellowstone. Not up close, though, in the distance, in the very, very far distance. They look like little dots in the prairie, and it's just fine by me. I don't want to be crushed. Question 3B. What's the largest hoofed animal you've ever seen? Well, there's the bison, of course, but I think technically elephants have hooves. I googled it, and it would be an elephant. I also saw giraffes, so I guess giraffes would also be big in the vertical sense rather than big in the horizontal sense. So these would be the two biggest animals I've seen, and not in a zoo. I saw them on, again, at a distance, because again, these are not animals that you just want to go to try to, I don't know, pet in the wild. I saw them. I went on an African safari when a few years ago, and yeah, I saw these amazing animals. It was a lot of fun. So a safari, not to shoot them, just to picture them and just see them and watch them. And no animals were hurt on my safari. Question number 3. We're still at number 3C. So third question of question 3. Do you have evidence that you live near coyotes? Well, yeah, my own eyes. I saw one. And not in my backyard, because I live rather in the middle of Ottawa, so it's rather a downtown place. But just on the outskirts of Ottawa, I was driving and there was a coyote in the middle of the road, just crossing the road very slowly, not bothered by much. I think in a few years, in the region of Ottawa, coyotes will replace raccoons as the pest in the suburbs. They are everywhere. There's a lot of green spaces in Ottawa. Another reason why it feels like a small town. There's a lot of green spaces, a lot of rivers, a lot of water. I think for coyotes, it's just a good place. So yeah, I think they're going to replace raccoons as pests in the near future. Question 4, old Doc Frye. What's your history with Westerns? Novels, TVs, movies? I'm going to start with TV. None. I've never watched a Western TV series or TV series set in the West. I've never watched Little House on the Prairie, Bonanza. When I was in high school, one very popular show was Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. I've never watched that. All my friends were talking about it at school, and I had no idea what they were talking about because I was not watching it. So I've never watched any. Movies, I've seen a few more, but not necessarily when they came out. Like, of course, not the ones that were produced before I was born. Obviously, I did not see them when they came out, but even those, I haven't seen many movies. So I've seen a few, like 1990s Westerns. There was a bunch that were produced, like Silverado, Tombstone, The Quick and the Dead. And of these, I think Tombstone would be my favorite. Of the older classics, I of course have seen Once Upon a Time in the West and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And the music of Ennio Morricone is just awesome. I love these movies for the music and not for the images. Well, a little bit for Once Upon a Time in the West. We see the Monument Valley, which is beautiful place where I've never been, but the other classic Westerns, like with John Wayne, never seen a single one. The only John Wayne movie I've ever seen is The Longest Day, which is a World War II movie. So yeah, I've never really seen Westerns. As to books, I grew up with a Western comic strip. That's Lucky Luke, the main character that's Lucky Luke here. He is the fastest gun in the West. He shoots faster than his own shadow. So, you have all the, I'm going to call them cliches. All the cliches of the American West are in there, but there's also a historical basis. So this is about the stagecoach that would cross the American West. This one is one from the Wells Fargo Company. And you can see Wells Fargo here and US Mail there. And of course, this was created, I think, in the late 1940s, 1950s, and 1960s. So it comes with the cliches of the time. There's a lot of there's the Indians attacking the Indians attacking the stagecoach and living in wigwams, or regardless of what the ethnic origin of the Indians in question were. They were all lumped together, whether they were Comanches or Cherokees or Apaches or Sioux or whatever. They were all pictured the same, with a bandana and feathers in their hair, the way they were pictured in, I guess, Western movies at the time. And you have gamblers and saloons, and you have bandits attacking the stagecoach, and you had deserts, crossing deserts, and once in a while there was a true historical figure appearing in there. So this one is about Calamity Jane. This one is interesting. There was one about Billy the Kid, one about Jesse James. That one sucks. It's really not good. And this one here, there's a villain you maybe do not know. His name was Black Bart, and that is a real historical figure, because at the end of the book we have a little explanation as to who this Black Bart was. He was a school teacher who apparently was rather bored, and he decided to use a sort of a shotgun, I guess, that he had confiscated to a student, to a pupil, and he decided to use that to attack the stagecoach. And yeah, it's a true historical figure, apparently. So I learned of the legends of the American West through this character of Lucky Luke. And yeah, I'm very fond of that character. After Asterix, I would say he's my favorite. Though, as opposed to Asterix, all the Asterix written by Goscinny, by this author here, were good. However, plenty of Lucky Lukes are not good. So some of them are terrible. The one with Jesse James is terrible. Question number 5. Diamond Lil at the Rialto saloon. What's your relationship with alcohol? Purely social. I do not like the taste. So I ended up tasting it and drinking it just to please people, because it's annoying to have to explain, oh no thanks, I don't drink. Why? Are you sick? Are you on antibiotics? Are you pregnant? No, I just don't like the taste. So just instead of just explaining that all the time, I just say, okay, yes, I'll take one glass, or like glass of wine or something, and I sip it through the entire evening, and that's going to be enough for me. Sometimes I drink a bit more, but the only drinks I really like are sweet cocktails. So basically it's not for the alcohol, it's for the sugar. So I don't really drink alcohol. So sub question is, ever had a relationship with a bartender, a friendship with a bartender? Never met any bartender, at least that I know of. Question 6. The city slicker from back east. Well, that's me. What do you consider the best Western you've ever read? And that is a fun question, because how many Westerns have I ever read in my entire life, not including Lucky Luke? I have read a grand total of 3 Westerns. The first one I read was several years ago. The title is The Trappers of Arkansas, or The Loyal Heart, by the author, the author was the most typically Western author name, Gustave Aimard. Yep, he's a Frenchman. So it's a Western written in French by a Frenchman in the 19th century, so 1860s, I guess. The thing is that this man actually has been in the West. He's a true adventurer. He was born of a duke and a countess, but not married to one another. So he was illegitimate, and so he was placed in a foster family. He was raised there, and when he was, the biographies are not clear. I read the Wikipedia article in English and the one in French, and they don't say the same thing. So between the ages of 9 and 12, either he ran away or he was placed on a merchant ship as a boy, because at the time on ships, they used, the young boys were on ships, so apprentice ships, I guess. So he did that, and then came back to France, and he lived a life on ships quite a bit. And then at some point he just deserted his ship, like many mariners did at the time, and that was in Chile, and somehow he made his way up north, all the way to North America, where he lived as a fur trader, a miner. He did a lot of things, and at some point he married a Comanche woman, according to one of the biographies, but then according to the same biography, he also married a French woman. So I don't know what happened to the Comanche woman. So he lived the real deal. He's been there. But I remember nothing of that book, except the fact that I read it. I remember reading it, but I don't really remember that book. So I thought I would read another one for this June on the Range, but I don't think I will. The second book that I've read, the second one that I've read in my life is this one. This is Desperados by Ron Hansen, and this is a novel. It's kind of a historical novel about the Dalton brothers. The famous enemies, the famous nemesis of Lucky Luke. It's Lucky Luke that is the nemesis of the Daltons, because he catches them every time. So this is based, I guess, on a true story. It's more a historical novel than Western, but it was kind of nice. And one that I've read this year is Hombre by Elmore Leonard. Now, this is truly a Western in the purest form. Like, there's this man, we don't really know who he is. What's his real name? We'll just call him Hombre. He's a white man. He was raised by Apaches. And there's a stagecoach. The stagecoach has to go from point A to point B. It gets attacked by bandits. And then they have to survive in the desert. And then the passengers of the stagecoach, who did not like this Hombre because he's mean, he's cruel, he's selfish, and all of that. And now they all depend on him to survive. And there's a damsel in distress. And there's an abandoned mine. There's a bunch of things going on. It's just typical Western, and it was a fun read. I'm not going to deny it. So of the three books that I've read, which one's my favorite? I think I'm going to give it to this one, because it's more historical novel than Western, and I guess this fits more my liking. So I'm going to give the crown to this one. But I did enjoy this one. It was fun. Yeah, it did not turn me into a massive fan of Westerns, like I'm a fan of romance. I don't think I'm going to come back regularly to Western just to cheer me up. But I'll definitely read some more Westerns for June on the Range next year, I guess. Question number 7. The men with the badge. Have you ever been in charge of other people? No, I've never been a manager. I'm just in charge of myself. What's the most authority you've ever handled? And that is an entirely different question. Once upon a time, I was the face of the law. You would enter Canada and you would see me. I was a customs officer at the border between Canada and the United States. It was my summer job. Because during the summer, there's much more traffic crossing between Canada and the United States. So the customs officers need reinforcements, and they hire university students. And I was one of those. So I had the power to arrest you. I arrested one person during my 4 summers, I think, that I spent there. And yeah, I just arrested one person. It so happened that only good people came to see me. So I would ask the regular question. So the first one is, where do you live? Because if you're Canadian returning to Canada or an American entering Canada, it's not the same set of questions. And then depending on your answer, so let's say you're an American entering Canada, we would ask, what's the purpose of your trip? How long are you going to stay? Are you bringing any firearm or weapons? And that is the question that got the funniest answers or the weirdest answers. Most of the time it was no. Once in a while, I needed to ask a second question. So once upon a time, there was this guy. He was coming to Canada to hunt bears. Do you have any firearm or weapons? He said no. How are you going to kill bears? Oh, well, I have my bow and arrow. Doesn't it count as a weapon if it can kill a bear? Oh, well, I thought you meant guns. Well, I said firearms or weapons. But the thing is, I learned later, the guy was right. A bow and arrow is not a weapon. It's a sporting good. I don't know who made that law. If it can kill a bear, shouldn't it be a weapon? But apparently not. He was right. Anyway, and second question, second time I had a weird answer to that one. The woman, I think she was a bit lost. The plate on her car, the license plate on her car was from rather far south, so not a state close to the border of Canada and the United States. And I asked, where are you going? And she said, I want to see Niagara Falls. On this tone of really space, good grief, did she take something before driving? And the thing is, as customs officer, you're not allowed to arrest people for for infractions to the driving laws. So you cannot arrest someone for drunk driving. You have to call the police to say, I have someone, I think perhaps maybe, and you're not allowed to hold them at the customs. You have to let them go and the police catch them just a bit after. So it doesn't happen very often. But anyway, she had like this answer, and we were really far from Niagara Falls, by the way. I was at the custom post, the custom office, the border on the east side of Champlain Lake. So that's on the main highway between Boston and Montreal. That's on the border between Vermont and Quebec. So from Vermont, think about it, Vermont to Niagara Falls. It's far. Okay, Niagara Falls. Classic question, do you have any firearms or weapons? Of course. What do you mean, of course? That's the wrong answer in Canada. We don't want your goddamn firearms. She thought I was asking the question for her protection. No. I was asking the question for our protection. We do not want your guns. So I said, oh, okay, well, thank you for telling me. She said that she had a gun in her glove compartment. I said, okay. I wrote this on a little piece of paper. I said, could you please park on your left, please? Thank you. And then my colleague who was inside and would go then to search the car, I told her, by the way, she says she has a gun in the glove compartment. Okay, so what my colleague did is that simply she went to see the woman in question, say, did you confirm you have a gun in your glove compartment? Well, that cannot enter Canada. So either you leave it here, you abandon it, or you turn around. And she chose to turn around. And what the colleague also did is that she called our American colleagues on the other side saying, okay, we turned somebody around who has a gun in their glove compartment and appears to be lost. Make what you will of that. And we don't know what the Americans did with that. I think the Americans customs officer and immigration officers have way more power than we do in Canada. So perhaps they could arrest her and search her for other substances. But we just turned her around. So that was it. So that's my story of me having authority to arrest you. And I wasn't good, by the way. At the time, today I think I'd be much better. But at the time, I wasn't good. I sucked at that job. But I don't have it anymore. It's a good thing. Now, question number 8. The Tombstone Kid. Have you ever fired a gun? No. And are you an aficionado of guns? No. The fewer guns on the planet, the better we will be. It's very simple. Question number 9. It ain't the bullet that gets you, it's the fall. How would you ideally like to cash in your chips? Well, I'm going to be boring and say the same thing as everybody. During my sleep, painlessly, at an old age. But I'm going to add a caveat to that. I don't want my body to slowly stop functioning while my brain remains, or I don't want my brain to go before my body. I want both of them to go at the same time. I don't want to be a burden to anyone in my old age. I don't want to live like for 10 years in an old people's home, just being in a chair and looking at TV and not being quite there and having no control over my bodily functions. And I don't want that. I really don't want that. So I guess when I get closer to that, I'll take measures, because now in Canada, you can ask for medically assisted suicide. So when I get there, I'll think about it. But at the moment, I don't think it's an issue right now. And the last question is, tag some haloots. That's the thing. Everybody has done that tag. So I don't know who to tag. I'm going to take the coward's way out, the yellow-livered way out, and say, if you want to do the tag, consider yourselves tagged. So that's it for me. Thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine!